Hey everybody, thank you for joining me again. This is Jasmine, your host of the Ethereal Pathways podcast. I wanted to let you know why I've taken a little bit of a hiatus, a little bit over a month, probably almost 2 months now, off of my podcast. I've been going through a lot of personal things, things in my personal life that were very difficult, very emotional. Been doing some more inner healing, inner work on myself. And there's been things going on in my family, mainly with my daughter, some issues there that, we had to get her into therapy. And I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit because I know there are a lot of people out there that, are on a healing journey that want to improve their lives. They don't want to repeat toxic patterns like me, and start working on themselves. And, like I've been working on. And it's difficult. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs, just like, life. That's just how it is. And some days are going to be harder than others. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have failures in the process, but, it's all about getting back up, dusting yourself off, and keep going. And, keep trying to have that positive attitude as much as you can. I know there's some days it's very difficult to keep that, but I wanted to touch a little bit on, without giving a ton of detail, about what I'm going through, because I know there's others out there going through something similar, or, have gone through it, or, haven't yet, and maybe they're going to, and this might help you. So I think I've mentioned before, in previous videos about some toxic patterns, cycles that I've noticed in my family, mainly with my mother, and how I started noticing that I was repeating the same pattern with my daughter. And it's definitely not near, I believe, what it was with my mother, because she was bipolar, but I definitely see the pattern, and I started seeing the pattern recently. I did start seeing a pattern probably 2 years ago. But now I'm seeing more different things that, I could see that I'm doing that was done to me. And it's never easy when you see those things, because you can't unsee them once you see them, once your spiritual eyes and your, personal eyes are open to them. And now they're there. And there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of guilt. But you got to forgive yourself, and you got to realize and have some grace for yourself to know that you were raised that way. That's the way I was raised. I didn't know any different. And it's such a toxic pattern, or just a way of I was raised and conditioned to believe, because that's all I saw growing up, for a while. And you don't even think about it. It's subconscious. It's just a knee-jerk reaction at that point. It still doesn't change the fact that you feel guilty, you feel shame, you're hard on yourself, and you have a tendency to want to kind of beat yourself up a little bit, but you can't live in that, and I've learned that. And some days are easier than others about not doing that, but, I now know, and I have a lot more self-love for myself, and, I understand myself more now, where I do stop myself from reeling too much in that direction. And I bring myself back, and start thinking more positive thoughts, speaking in positive affirmations, things like that, and change my actions. So it is a continual process of, redirect, when you go through those moments and you see that stuff. But one thing that, occurred with us was there, and this is new for me, because I didn't spend a lot of my childhood around my mother. It was it's like I spent part of my childhood just up until I was about 8, 9 years old, somewhere in there, where she was physically in my life. And then she left the state, and got remarried and left the state. And then took me and my brother and sister all got separated. Me and my brother went with my dad and stayed there in Atlanta. And my sister was taken by my mom after she got remarried with her new husband, and was taken to Phoenix. And so that in itself was traumatic for me, losing my mom out of my life suddenly. And we did go to counseling for some of that, but seeing how I think it was different, like when a new man came in her life, I never thought about this before. I wasn't there, only my sister was there, and she was pretty young, but I want to say that it appeared to me that she kind of put the man above her child, and maybe, kind of put herself above the child's needs and what the child felt and all that. She just kind of did whatever she wanted to do and didn't really, I guess, maybe ask the child, or that child didn't know. I don't know, but I don't know if that's a pattern or not, but I felt like, I've been seeing this person for several months, over 6 months probably now. And yeah, it has been over 6 months now. And, I waited for my daughter to let me know when she was ready to meet him. But it was just after maybe 3 months of seeing him that she asked to meet him. And I was kind of surprised. So I went that route and introduced her. She was very excited. She wanted to spend more time with him. And, in hindsight, I probably should have slowed it down and, had that taken more time, for the gradual introduction and, getting used to them, this person. But it didn't happen like that. It was, we were feeling it. It was, it seemed to go great. It seemed to be going great with her, and she was very accepted, and was very happy, felt safe with him and everything. And then my ex, I guess, started saying some things to her. I'm not sure exactly what everything was that he told her, but he had a past with the person I'm now dating, and it wasn't good. And there were some words way back years ago spoken, and so there was some animosity still there. And I think it kind of carried over into the father-daughter relationship, where he might have said some things that made her question the person I was dating, and question whether or not she could trust him at that point. She had no reason not to trust him, up until then. She was excited. She loved hanging around him, which is way most kids are around this, person I'm dating. Kids love him. He's actually, got godchildren. He's got lots of friends that, their kids love him. He's, on their emergency contact list to come pick up the kids from school. So for several friends, even at Lily's school, for at least three friends. And so it's surprising to me when I started seeing her switch and treat it well. I didn't actually see it at first. He was telling me after the fact that, she would say things when I go to the bathroom, which is the only time I would leave them alone. And I'd always check, okay, everybody okay? I'm going to go to the bathroom. Yeah, we're fine. So I'd come back, and he wouldn't tell me until maybe later that evening when, we were alone, or the next day or whatever. But he would tell me she would say really mean things to him. And, she's 13, so she's kind of at that age, where she's changing a lot. She's still trying to, figure out who she is, how she fits in with her peers at school and things. She's been picked on. She's been bullied a little bit. And it's been difficult for her, this transition at this new school. And I didn't even stop to really think about the overall picture, when this started happening. It went on for a couple months this past year, just towards the end of the year. It didn't even stop and occur to me at first that she's went through a lot of changes this last year and a half, 2 years, since me and her father divorced. And I know that was a lot for her, that big change. But I spent a year and a half by myself, working on myself, giving her time to adjust, to the change of not having her father in the household and having, us co-parenting, 2 separate households. And she seemed fine. She seemed adjusted. I'm sure that there was residual things there that, are probably not really seen, but she said that she was, she was fine. She was happy with what, the way things were before I started seeing somebody. And I wasn't out there trying to look for anybody. This person came into my life, organically. So I was praying, and I said, okay, God, I feel like I'm ready, for whenever you're ready to send somebody. And like 2 months later, this person showed up in my life unexpectedly, through me answering a Facebook marketplace ad for a lawnmower, and he was selling one. So, and come to find out, we know a lot of the same people. Used to be years ago, before I, decided to have a kid and get pregnant. We used to be in a lot of the same circles, singing karaoke, things like that. And of course, he knew my ex before I did, many years before I did. And so we were comparing notes and things like that. But, getting back to the story, I know I kind of digress. It's my ADHD. She, when she started finding out about this stuff from her dad, she started acting different. We started sitting her down and talking to her, trying to figure out what was going on, me and, my boyfriend separately and then together. And she wouldn't give us the same story twice. Now, she has mild autism. She has what do they call the stemming behaviors? And she stutters a lot, especially when she gets nervous or overly excited, and things like that. So sometimes when she feels under pressure, she will stutter, and then she will sometimes just throw a story out there, throw something out there that isn't really true. And so we started noticing she was starting to do that, and we weren't getting consistent answers out of her. And, I started asking her, okay, are you going through, are you jealous of him and my time with him? And then she said, yeah, she was jealous. Okay, well, that made sense. But then later there was other things, a few weeks later, there was other things, because things kept, excuse my nose is itching. Things kept escalating between them. And it was always when I was not in the room. It was when I went to the bathroom. And I thought, what is going on? This not my daughter. Like, she never acts like this towards anybody, especially adults, because we raised her, respect elders. And you don't talk to people mean and hurt their feelings, things like, So I knew something was going on, and I knew he was telling me the truth, because everything, she did admit to some of it. And one time I purposely made sure that she couldn't hear me, and she was sitting at the table that had her back to me across the house. And I was in the hallway on the other side of the house listening as I came out of the bathroom, because I wanted to try to catch her saying it, and I caught her. I caught her treating him disrespectfully, and I just walked out there and went, Lily, why would you do that? Like, why would you say something like that to somebody? That's not very nice. This is what we've been talking about. We need to sit here and talk about this and figure out what's going on. Why do you feel this way? Did he do something to you? And I would ask her with him and without him, in case she, felt unsafe or whatever, uncomfortable telling me. And it never came out. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, there's something going on with my child that's more than the jealousy, I feel like. We started hearing about her being bullied at school, which, made me feel really bad for her, because I got bullied a lot in middle school. So much that one point, it caused an altercation with me and, a main boy, but he had two other guys, cohorts, that were ganging up on me and sexually harassing me and things like that. And so, it basically, I was given the go ahead by the bus driver to she would back me up if I decided to retaliate. And I did. And, that ended it. Thank goodness. Those boys got suspended, and I got a stern talking to by the superintendent, and said, don't do it again. But, because it had been witnessed by the bus driver for months and months. And, I was always told, just keep your mouth shut, don't start a fight, things like that, and walk away, but it was affecting me. So me going through that, I was thinking, she's probably getting bullied and she's not telling me how bad it is. So, we started trying to get her to open up, and kept, started pressing her a little bit more. Okay, there's something else going on here. Well, there was a few other things that we found out, but by that point, she had admitted, and this is a trigger warning, so I'm going to tell some people right now. This could be a trigger warning for some people. She admitted to my boyfriend that she wanted to hurt herself. And that shocked me. It absolutely shocked me. And I just started crying. But what was strange was it took him a couple days to tell me, because he was just not sure. He was praying about it. He didn't know how. He wanted to tell me in person, me and her dad in person, and he couldn't coordinate that. He kept trying to coordinate it. We didn't know why. He was pushing for that right away, but he wanted to be able to tell us in person together, and we just couldn't coordinate it. So what was strange was the next day I was guided, after this occurred, that she told him this, and I didn't know that she told him that. I felt guided to just intuitively talk to her about, when you're hurting inside, sometimes you turn on yourself and you can hurt yourself in different ways. And, I kindly talked to her about that and said, some people, will do X, Y, Z. I don't want to go into it on this video, for obvious reasons. YouTube may, won't, take my video down, but that's a real thing, and I was trying to explain to her that there's things that people will do sometimes to harm themselves because they don't know how to release or process hurt emotions and feelings, and they build up and they will come out different ways. And so you seek relief in different ways, different people do. And, those are not good ways of doing that. And I told her, I'm going to get you in, I think it's about time we get you into a counselor, to somebody to talk to about these things. If I feel like at this point, something might be going on that's more serious that you're not really telling us about. And so anyway, I knew she told some of us about it, but I knew that there was some things that she hadn't told us. So I didn't even know about the conversation that she had the day before with my boyfriend. And it was like a couple days later when he says, I'm telling, we really need to get you guys together. Like, I need to tell y'all something that's really serious about something Lily said. And I went, can you at least give me an idea? And he's like, I really don't want to do that, over the phone. This is a conversation that it takes, seriousness enough that it needs to be in person. And I said, is it about her wanting to hurt herself? And he was like, yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah. And I said, strangely enough, I was intuitively guided the next day after you talked to her to talk to her about that. And now I know why. I'm sorry. This is it's hard for me because I went through something similar in my 20s after my first divorce. And I thought about, a certain way of doing it. And I'm not gonna spell it out here because, obvious reasons, YouTube and trigger warnings and things. There was one point in that part of my life where I was at my lowest and I thought about it. I didn't really act on it, but I sat there and thought about it one night. And it hurts me because I've been there. I wish I would have gotten help back then. To talk to a counselor, to talk to a professional and work through all those emotions, because I had lost my dad the year he gave me away in marriage. Just a few months later, I lost him at 19, on my 20th birthday. Excuse me. And then not even 2.5 years later, I got divorced. And he was always my safety blanket, and he was going to be there for you. He always told me, if it doesn't work out between you and him, you can come move back home. He always kept my room for me. And that was gone. My dad was just gone. My mom was already pretty much out of my life. And that was my last parent. We had a small family. So I only had a few cousins and an aunt at that point left on my dad's side of the family. We didn't talk to anybody on my mom's side of the family. She had cut them all off years ago. She only had one half brother. So it was really difficult for me, and it just brought me back there thinking about that. And I went, oh my gosh, my own daughter. I never saw this coming. How did I not see the signs? How did I not you know, and you can't beat yourself up as a parent, but, you know, my mind went there, as a lot of parents do. And so that's a lot of what I've been going through the last 2 to 3 months, is this situation with my daughter and my boyfriend. Things came to a head between them where he was trying to push her to get it all out because he was worried that she was going to hurt herself. And he pushed her a little bit too much. And, you know, she did blurt out some things. I hate you. I hate blah, blah, blah. You know, things came out, but at least she got it out. But it also, you know, I had to kind of give them some space. And I was just really concerned that it wasn't going to come back from that with the way she felt about him. She actually told me after that, just a week or two ago, that, you know, she doesn't mind me. She wants me to date other people. And I was like, okay, why? And then the reason didn't make any sense to me, because it would be the same situation with anybody else I date. So I had to talk to her through that. But I'm like, you know, I validated her feelings, and I said, I understand that you feel that way. I'm not saying that you can't feel that way. You know, I validated her feelings. I said, I understand, but, you know, I want you to talk to your counselor about that and work through that. She's been seeing a counselor now for, I think, 3 times now. She sees her weekly. And it just really, I just said, you know what, you know, please write down things that you want to talk to your counselor about that are bothering you. And I don't want to see the list, but please add that to the list, because, you know, and I talked to the counselor and kind of told her a little bit about what was going on privately, because that was a huge concern of mine. And I just wanted to share that, because this has taken such a huge emotional toll on me that I haven't been able to focus on my podcast. I haven't had the inspiration to want to do it, because it's been so heavy, and it's just been so hard for me to work through this. And we're still going through it. She is doing better. She has brought her grades up at school. She was near failing one class, and, you know, had a couple D's and a C, and, you know, an A's and B's, and she brought that up to A's, B's, and 1 C. And, you know, I'm proud of her, and I've told her that over and over, how proud of her. You know, her dad's been working with her on the homework every day. In the afternoons, he changed his schedule to work with her, you know, just for homework, to be with her every afternoon to do that. So I am thankful for that. It's just, it really shocked me, you know, to hear these things, and it took a huge toll on me emotionally, understandably. And so that's where I've been. That's why I haven't posted. Also, I had to cut a lot of the subscriptions, the editing software, the podcast platform. That's why I'm recording this on my phone. I had to cut it due to financial reasons. Things are really tight financially at the moment, and they're getting a little bit better, hopefully. But it looks like it could be. So hopefully I can get those back in a few months. But, you know, for right now, I had to just cut everything, all the software, you know, everything I use, ChatGPT, whatever things I use to create my thumbnails, you know, the music, all that kind of stuff, the graphics. I had to cut all of it for financial reasons. So that's been another thing that I was going through, was, you know, that. But that's looking better for right now anyway. You know, I know that can change in any day, but, you know, I had to make some decisions there that were difficult, and, you know, it's something I had to do. And so I do this as a hobby. You know, I would love to be able to do this and help people full time, you know, doing this podcast and sharing these stories, my stories, other people's stories, you know, of the traumas they overcame and how they worked through it and healed, and, you know, supernatural stuff and paranormal stuff. Like, I'd love to be able to share my stories with people, but, you know, I do have, you know, I work 2 jobs. I have limited, you know, time. It's mostly the weekends that I have to do this. And, you know, with the editing and some of the time it takes to do that, I don't have a whole lot of time. I try to spend, you know, every other weekend with my daughter and focus on her. So, you know, whatever time I do have, I try to do it when she's not up and around, if at all possible, because she has complained about that, you know, me taking time away from her during the day to do that. Obviously, parents have to do that, but at this point, I'm not wanting to add fuel to the fire with her. So I've been trying to focus on her as much as I can, when undivided attention when she's there, until things improve, and we can work through some of those things now that she's got a counselor. So that's what I've been going through. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. I know that was a little bit lengthy of me sharing this video. I hope that there's a lot of people out there that this can help. There's been some things that I have worked through on my own, with my own insecurities, with my boyfriend the last 2-3 months too, throughout all of these things that have come up, that maybe I'll share about in my next video. Things that came up specifically, and wounds, triggers, things that have been a repeated pattern in relationships that I'm seeing more of, that I'm working through and I'm trying to heal. And I hope that helps some people too once I share that, because it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes consistent effort, actions on your part to do the work and things like that. So I figured that would help some people out there too. Anyway, I hope everybody has a wonderful day or evening whenever you're watching this, and I leave you in love and light, and God bless. Take care.